Hi, welcome. This is another video we have, and it is going to be kind of the quick and dirty Revolutionary War battles. So this is really talking about the nitty-gritty of the fighting. So in class we've already really discussed why colonists are slowly inching towards this. We talked about the first shots fired at the battles of Lexington and Concord, and we talked about that big battle really in Boston, just outside Boston back then traditionally, which is Battle of Bunker Hill. You got it. So now I'm going to go through and really talk about the military for a minute, and then talk about the rest of those battles that are going to really occur between 1776 and 1778, okay? So when we talk about the British military versus the colonial military, it's not even a contest. They are so much better prepared. They have more munitions, they have more people, they have better uniforms, especially for when it gets colder. They have just so much more stuff, so much more money, and they're so much better prepared, right? But they do not have certain things. They do not have the knowledge of the land, like we have knowledge of the land after living here since the 1600s, right? They do not have an understanding of this fight, like colonists have an understanding of this fight. If they lose here, they could lose everything, right? They could lose their homes, they could lose their way of life as they know it. And for the British, and a lot of, again, these very young soldiers that are being sent over from England, they don't see it that way. They don't feel it that way, right? So it's going to be much, much different for them emotionally. And again, that home field advantage is both physical in knowing the terrain, knowing the land, knowing when to fight, where to fight, guerrilla warfare, where to seep back in if there's swamp and where someone can't find your trail or not. And it's also highly emotional. And it's going to give our colonists much more a sense of fight than the British are going to have, okay? So keep that in mind. And something, too, to keep in mind, down the road we're going to talk about it, we have France. The colonists are going to get France and even Spain a little bit. And we have those allies that help us out a lot, and these leaders, just all the above, things that the British don't necessarily have. And again, that heart is not going to be the same for that sense of fighting. The role of minorities is going to be really enormous when we talk about this fighting, and something that you and I are going to discuss a lot when it comes to a theme during wartime, a theme of everybody pitching and helping. You lose the luxury of prejudice. You cannot say, oh wait, this is your skin color, this is your religion, no, I'd rather not have you try and save lives with me today. No, everybody's got to pitch in, everybody's got to help, right? So wartime is a pretty special time where usually you lose the luxury of that prejudice. We see that as a theme. So minorities are going to be just enormous in the revolution. We know women are going to play a huge role. This is something we're going to see over and over, this kind of, quote, keep the home fires burning thing. If all the men are fighting, what are women doing? Women are working the farms and making sure that there's food to feed the soldiers. Women are keeping businesses running. Women are keeping their households running. They're doing everything that, quite ironically, they were told they could not do before. Obviously they can, right? Obviously our country survived with women running all of these things, so that's going to be a huge lesson. And it's going to get a little older every time when the men come back from the battlefield and say, okay, give me all of that, responsibility and power and all those jobs back. Women are going to not really want to relinquish it each time, and we're going to see that grow and grow over time. Women are going to be super active in boycotts. We know we have the Daughters of Liberty, you got it, Daughters of Liberty. They're aiding soldiers, and when we say aiding soldiers, this is everything. This is nursing. This is if your house happens to be near a battlefield, then boom, it is a hospital, right? You're ripping up your extra cloth and making bandages. You're doing all this stuff, melting down your plates and silverware that's made of pewter for bullets. This was super, super hands-on. Women were spies. Women were really good spies because there's this idea that women are not capable of a lot of this intelligence and a lot of this communication, so they would get overlooked. And this made them, of course, invisible people in a room. People didn't see women as people who could convey this information, so they become very, very, very valuable there. When we talk about women caring for soldiers, we're not just talking about, like, would you like a cup of tea? For instance, Molly Pitcher, we know, earns her name. She helps in that battle in New Jersey to give water to these men. And we're not talking like a cute little tray. She is dodging bullets. She is helping man a cannon when someone else can't. She is giving them water so they don't become dehydrated and pass out and die in this battlefield on a very, very hot day, a very crucial battle. So this help is just enormous. It's huge. And Abigail Adams is going to be someone who really raises the voice of women at this time. And we know later on she's going to tell her husband John, when you create this new government, Remember the ladies. That's her very famous quote because these women helped to build it, right? And we know of 20 women who are going to disguise themselves and fight in the Revolutionary War. 20 that we know of, which means there were many more. And one of my favorite, we're going to talk about her in class, is Deborah Sampson. D. Samps, she is the best, and we're going to tell her story. And she was so respected, even when she was found out that she earns a soldier's pension for the rest of her life and is going to marry and fall in love with someone she fought with. Man, stuff that dreams are made of in the Revolutionary War, right? African Americans recruited on both sides to fight. A lot of times, of course, if you were in the South and you were a slave, it wasn't up to you. Sometimes the British would promise freedom to these slaves and say, hey, if you fight now, we'll give you freedom afterwards. Some patriots do this too. This was Alexander Hamilton's idea. And again, this idea of like, get over it. Get over it in general, and especially in wartime, we need everybody. We need everyone. And he said, you have to get over this prejudice, and the British are beating us at this game because they're getting African Americans to fight, and we aren't. Get with the times. And he was so progressive that way. Unfortunately, more people did not think like him. Native Americans still are going to be siding mostly with the British in hopes that there's way too many colonists. If the British win, they'll get some of that land back. Unfortunately, same story as the French and Indian War. More Native Americans are going to dissolve in the aftermath of this revolution, and they do not get a lot of that land back. Again, these wars are just going to really tear apart a lot of tribes every single time they happen. So again, we're looking at this outline. The Revolutionary War begins, and if we look at the battles very quickly, Battle of Harlem Heights. Harlem obviously is in New York City. You got it. The British are going to capture Long Island, and this is when George Washington retreats to Manhattan. So as he is fighting, as he is leaving, he turns around, and he has some victories sometimes, okay? Kind of on the retreat, he's going to fight. And, of course, we know the very famous moment that he crosses the Delaware. You got it, that famous painting, right? The battles of Trenton and Princeton, December of 1776. December of 1776, we already talked about how there's lots of mercenaries, people paid to fight. We said a lot of those were German mercenaries whose names are Hessians. You got it. How did the Germans feel about Christmas? Exactly. They pretty much invented it. Santa Claus, Christmas trees, oh, Tannenbaum. They love it. And this is where George Washington fights a little dirty. Now, regular military protocol said you would like agree on a time to fight and have terms and all of this. He does a surprise attack on Christmas Day in Trenton. And there's all these Hessians, and of course they're far from home, they miss their families, they've been drinking the night before, and it's like too easy. He just like takes Trenton, they're all kind of hungover, right? And it's like so easy. And then he goes on to also take Princeton. Battle of Brandywine Creek in Philadelphia. The British are going to capture Philadelphia. This is when we are forced to retreat, and we set up camp outside Philly for the winter in Valley Forge. We will talk about that in a second. Battle of Saratoga, the turning point of the Revolution. Drill that into your head. The big battles are going to be the first, which is Lexington and Concord, the first major battle, which is Battle of Bunker Hill, the turning point, which is Saratoga, and the last battle, which we're going to talk about in class, which is Yorktown. Saratoga is the turning point for the big reason that this is where we do well enough, we win this battle, and we impress the French. And kind of like a college scout who would see you play really well in a game and say, I think I can, bank on this person and recruit them for college. The French see our performance, are kind of watching, paying attention to what's going on in America, weren't sure if this was too much of a gamble to side with us. They see what goes on in Saratoga and they say, maybe this isn't so crazy. Maybe these colonists can actually win. Let's get behind them. Look how well they did here. This is when we siege General Burgoyne, and his men are totally outnumbered. We cut down the reinforcements, the supplies that could reach them because we surround them, and they are going to surrender. And then France becomes our ally, right? Ben Franklin has been working hard to get them to side with us. Valley Forge for the winter is dismal. December to early winter of 1778, so 77 to 78, that whole winter season. It is brutally cold. Men are getting frostbite. They do not have enough food. It's really chilly. There's poor conditions. People don't even have socks, let alone shoes. We're talking basics that the British don't have to worry about, right? But what do we have that they do not? Washington's leadership. He's going to read aloud to them from common sense. He stays with the men there. He's going to really instill them. We get European training. Baron von Steuben is a super cool guy. He is a Prussian. And if you guys are ever driving on the highway, shoot, I feel like it's on the way to Massachusetts. At one of the highway stops, there's a big commemorative sign for him. He was a really cool guy. He brings this European military training that we were lacking, whips these men into shape. And he is going to deliver that training. He was a super snazzy dresser. He was someone who was openly gay in the 1770s, which was not something that you would see a lot. He was a character, he was a foreigner, and at first these men are not sure. And then he just totally is going to be essential, integral to us getting that military training that we needed, right? So he is going to help even more. We are a finely tuned fighting force when we actually mobilize that spring, and we definitely have problems. Inflation is a problem because what's our currency? We relied on the British currency. We're trying to tell people do the right thing, don't have super high prices in wartime, be a patriot, but people are going to and take advantage and have black market goods being sold. So things are going to be tricky, right? But when we do emerge from Valley Forge, we're going to be a better fighting force, even though it seems so dismal. And then you and I are going to talk about smaller victories that we have, especially in the South, that ultimately lead us to Yorktown. One more thing I want to mention, the Battle of Saratoga. We had such a good turnout, and we had so many men, because this is the time when Jane McCrae gets killed. If you guys remember, it was that very famous painting, and we talked about that young woman who by accident, on purpose, what really happened, is killed by, we think, Native Americans who were allied with the British. This story spreads like wildfire that a young, beautiful woman has been killed, and when this happens, so many men, because they're upset, are going to sign up to fight in Saratoga, and we know that this is going to be this enormous victory that leads to the French and more after that. So again, the role of propaganda, all these little side stories in the making of what's going to be a greater victory down the road. All right, you guys, those are the battles of the Revolution, very, very quickly, the major ones, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you soon. Bye.